Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Teodula. This is Jerry Tello and Clasoca Matli. Want to thank everyone for joining us today on our Healing Generations podcast, where we, create a space and a time and a dialogue about, bringing that healing medicine from generations of ancestors to people all over the world. At the same time, begin to dialogue about the pain and the trauma and the struggle that people are going through, and so that we can bring more healing and more peace and more joy and more love and more, as we say in Cloca Nawake, more interconnected sacredness. I want to thank you for joining us today on this journey, this dialogue, and as we continue our ancestors' dreams and their prayers and their medicine work. Today I'm very happy, to have with us, old veterano, camarada, homie, brother. Been on this road for a long time, and been real blessed to do work with him and watch, close and from afar, his leadership and all the the blessings that he really fought for, so that our communities can be who they are, so that the next generation could have more blessings and more healing, and so our communities can really thrive in that way. And I'm talking about Arturo Bones Rodriguez, out of Denver, right out of that Denver way, and brother that's been doing this lucha, this warrior work for a long time, leadership in a lot of different ways. And so I just want to first, just thank you, brother, for joining us today, and give you the opportunity to greet the relatives that are listening out there.
Well, thank you, Jerry. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you and to also talk to gente and to communicate. So, from Denver, Aztlan, bienvenidos, aho. We acknowledge our ancestors in this space that we're in, the Arapaho and the Cheyenne, and we ask them for their blessings, for our palabra, and also for our journeys that we're on, and also the ancestors that they made ways with prior to the coming of the settlers, whether they be Spanish or British or whomever. We know that the southern nations came up to this way, and we know that there was an exchange, and we know that there was a dialogue. So that spirit is very strong here in the center, pretty much the center of the United States. And it's very interesting that I'm from Zacatecas, and I recently saw a very exciting post about where is the center of Mexico today. So some person who knows math and knows how to put it together said the center, taking the peripheral north, south, east, west, is in Canitas, Zacatecas. Bingo. Where am I from? Canitas, Zacatecas. And I was sharing that with my daughter today, who called me to share that she got a scholarship for her master's degree, early childhood education, fully paid, part of her job. And she's named after Geraldine Gonzalez, Corky Gonzalez's wife, and my grandmother, Angelita. So I said, your grandmothers are guiding you. This is your journey. That was a beautiful thing, to say, hey, guess what? Canitas. She goes, Canitas, where we're from? Dad, I said, yeah, the little pueblo where we're from, where all the adobes, that's the center of what is today Mexico. But anyway, bienvenidos todos, and it's always a pleasure to share palabras and chistos and chisme and whatever.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. That's interesting, because when we talk about that history that has been hidden, we talk about the history that sometimes has been kind of misgiven to us to make us not feel like we're the center of anything, make us
Right.
feel like we're foreigners, make us feel like we don't belong or we're not valuable enough. That's why we always start, thanking those ancestors and thanking Creator and thanking all those that have come before because, they sacrificed and they struggled so that we, could have an easier path, so that we could know who we were and all of that and know our traditions and know our songs and, know our values and all that way, that which we call la cultura cura. But
Hmm.
but with that in mind, I wonder if you could, you started off already to share a little bit about where your people are from. Tell me about that
Yeah.
journey of how brother Bones here, how you got to Denver all the way from where your parents or grandparents are from. What's that journey?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's been interesting to go back and revisit it. Also, 1902, Juan Rodriguez Ortega leaves Canitas, Mexico, comes north into what is today Nebraska, Colorado, and decides to settle in the Denver area with his children. And then he has more children here. And so, we were blessed for him to leave that particular pueblo. This is right before the revolution is really, really taking hold.
Mm,
And, the fighting with Villa and then Zapata's issues and so forth. And, he decided that he was going to come north. And so I think about that, and I know that it was a hard journey
mm,
walking probably most of the way, and by burro or whatever. We're talking about campesinos. We're talking about my gente that come here to work,
mhm,
farm laborers and lo que sea, and so I was very blessed to grow up with my grandmother. Once my grandfather he was killed in a bus accident,
mm,
and that bus accident gave us access to buying a home,
mm,
and from buying a home we bought two homes, and then we were able to buy three homes. Uh, the brothers were so we all ended up in Denver on different sides, north side, east side, and west side. I ended up in the north side, and so we were blessed. And I thank him for taking that journey and going back as a young child with my grandmother to Canitas, Zacatecas, because I was quote bilingual. Growing up in a Mexican home with your grandmother and your parents, and you're living Mexicano, you're living indigenous. Everything that we have searched for today and are searching for, you know, I lived. I grew up that way. My
mhm,
grandmother spoke Nahuatl and Mexicano. She didn't speak Spanish.
mm,
She didn't speak English. I taught her the ABCs, pero the enrichment, from growing up with her in this extended family, this huge family living in a three-bedroom home in North Denver, which today is untouchable.
mm,
The space I grew up in Denver, like all of Denver, the inner city, has been gentrified. So, aquí estamos, and but we still recognize that somos that sur. We have raíces there, and I have visited there and take my children there so they see where we came from. I traveled, and I always thought that being a social advocate and maybe sometimes even a spirited revolutionary, came from my abuelo journeying north.
mm,
He had to have that spirit of moving the Olin, as we call it. And so then I realized, that it was also in my abuelita,
mhm,
and realized that she was a curandera. I realized that she was a sovadora. I realized that she knew everything about every plant and had me picking quelites and this and nopales in the summer, and I was a small child. When I graduated from high school in '67, I weighed 90 pounds.
oh,
So I was a bones. I was a flaco. And so I spent
That's
a
where you
lot.
got your name, Bones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My brother, it started off as Flaco. Then you get to school, and you become anglicized, and becomes Bonesy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Flaquito, Bonesy. And then, high school, I said, I'm not a Bonesy anymore. That's too cute. I want to be macho. And there was nothing macho about me. I barely started growing hair. I was a late bloomer all the way, Jerry.
Mm,
Pero anyway, growing up with my abuelita and my mother working multiple jobs, having multiple relationships, and none of them were working out, and seeing her working it seemed like day and night, but we had a home and we had a family, and, my mother's youngest brother, Max Matias, got a mandato from his father
mm,
that he should never marry if anything happened to him as long as his mother was alive.
mm,
And he never married. He never married. He took care of my abuela, bought her a beautiful home, and treated her just like you would want a very excellent role model. Became my father after my mother
mm,
multiple multiple divorces and so forth, but he became my father.
mm,
And so I had that role model. I had the family. I never knew my father, my biological. I can't really say father. I refer to him as a biological connection, if you will.
mhm,
I didn't know him, but I know of his family. Pero, it's very interesting to go back and look at your familia and cherish, like you say, all families go through good things, bad things. I've had brothers that have died of alcoholism, drug addictions, you name it, and I was the first one to graduate from high school,
mm,
first one to graduate from college, master's, onto a PhD, multiple trainings for this and that and anything I could do, because I was taught to value education. And, that value came a lot of different ways. It came from not just going to school to get a better job, but it also came from learning, and my mother worked for Jewish people. And when I was going to junior high school, she gave me a briefcase,
mm.
and she said, "You're going to be my professor." And so I carried it in her honor to junior high school. I got beat up because you didn't carry briefcases in the
Yeah.
barrio.
Yeah.
That's not what you do. So I would have to hide it, every day, because I got tired of being beat up, and then I would walk home with it and put my books in it. And my mother never saw me as a professor. She saw me go to college, and she died my second year at the university.
Mm,
But she never, she always called me professor, professor, professor. And
mm,
so she started to install that knowledge base and so forth. And so, but getting back to the familia, raising my grandkids, my two youngest out of eight, and looking at them and realizing, the lessons that they're learning and that they're going to continue to learn, from us and their other grandparents who we're sharing right now. So for the last 2 months, they have been away from our home after 2 years.
mm.
And so it's been a real challenge at 71 to be a full-time parent.
Yeah.
Mavis and I never had children together, so this gives us an opportunity to raise girls, biracial girls, African and Mexican, Chicanos, and also just being in your 70s and knowing that, Mavis now is a great grandmother.
Mhm.
So it's been very interesting. The state of Colorado and Denver at one time had a pipeline of workers from Zacatecas, and there was Zacatecanos everywhere. Today, there's everybody but Zacatecanos.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I appreciate you sharing that. What really resonates with me is sometimes we don't really recognize the struggle. You talk about your relatives having to walk or get here some way and survive in order that they could have a better life. And sometimes we don't realize the pain and the struggle that our relatives have had to come through. And then that how beautiful that your mother saw that in you. Your mother saw the profe, she saw the teacher, she saw the leader in you even before you saw it in yourself, and she gave you the tools, and that not only that briefcase, but the internal tools that you had, you know. And it's always amazing to me because, you know, I think back at my life, and my dad died when I was 13 too, you know, younger, and so I didn't really grow up with my father as an adolescent. But there were other men. You know, I had older brothers. I had people that
Hmm.
stepped in,
Yeah.
and like your older brother that stepped in. And I think
Right.
that's what community is about.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
barrio is about. That's what our people are about. Is
Hmm.
that, you know, you step in, you step in where
Hmm.
is needed, you step in where is wanted, but also you step up when you see injustice. You speak up when you see inequality. You step forward when you see that your people are not being treated right. And you know, so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that part of your life, because I know that you've been very involved. You know, you mentioned, you know, Corky Gonzalez, you know, one of our leaders for many years, and still in his spirit he continues to guide us in that example. I know that you are very, very involved in the movimiento, the Chicano movement, and all of those things. You know, how did that happen? When did that happen? And how did you become involved in the Chicano movement and all the guerra, if you will, the fighting for the rights of our people?
Yeah. You know, it's really hard to pinpoint, but the conciencia, you know, about being Mexicano starts very early growing up in the north side, which was predominantly Italian and German, and, you know, no negros, two families, a few Asian families. But, you know, you start to know that once you stepped outside of your home, you were Pancho.
Mm,
I had the nickname from the Italians as Pancho.
mm,
And you know, I flowed with it because to us, Pancho signified Pancho Villa. It
mm.
had always been been a positive thing. And being from the north, there, you know, I'm saying, well, you know, Zacatecas. I'm saying, you know, that's a positive thing. But then I realized, you know, that it wasn't positive. They were looking at me as a foreigner. They were looking at me as something, you know, less than. So I had a conciencia, but we were taught from my grandmother, especially, to be very, very humble and to be very, you know, respectful,
Mm.
and not to fall into the hate, you know, of the gringo, you know, even using the word gringo, you know, at one time, you know, became, you know, a word that we didn't use, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Because it had that connotation. Pero growing up and going to school, and I think, you know, when you really start to look at, you become social. I became social. I was a socialite, you know, Chicano, you know, good looking, and I was always working, so I had feria, you know, I was mowing lawns, anything I could make money. I was a sweeper boy at junior high school, you know, so I could afford nice haircuts, razor cuts,
Hmm.
and shoes and so forth, you know. But I worked for that, you know, I worked for that, you know. So I started to date white girls and asking them, and then I realized that, you know, you can't date white girls. You know, you
Mm,
know, you have to be Italian. You know, they're telling me, tell my family you're Italian. I said, I'm not Italian.
mm,
You know, so you start to have this conciencia in Denver. You know, had a period and still has a period. You know, of KKK, when the KKK
mm.
in the 50s and ran city government, especially Denver government, and also the state of Colorado. There was KKKs elected left and right to office. So that whole idea of racism, you know, wasn't in your face, but it was there. You know,
Mm.
you knew you were from the lower side of the north side, you know, especially when I went to high school, North High School, which now is predominantly Mexicano Chicano, was white, you know.
Mm.
So you know, that whole thing. So, you know, you start to have a conciencia. And by the 60s, the Cesar Chavez organizing and us being farm workers, you know, it's in the neighborhood.
Right.
It's something's happening. Corky Gonzalez power, personality as a boxer, as a businessman. I come to find out that the Portales, who is from my biological side, male side, I'm a Portales
Mm.
while his brother Art married one of the sisters.
Mm.
And so when I married Corky's daughter, Charlotte, his second daughter, and I was told this, and I says, my brother is married to a Portales, and we know that you're a Portales. I was
Mm.
stunned.
Mm.
I was stunned. I said, wow, what am I going to do here? I love this. I love her. I want to marry her. I asked him for permission to marry her and so forth. And so I made a decision to stay married, and
Mm.
we had a great relationship for 11 years. And then things changed and so forth. We got married, but we're parents to this day. When we divorced 11 years later, we divorced a marriage. We didn't divorce a relationship
Mm.
to our children.
Right.
We didn't relate a bonding to continue to raise those children. So we used to go to school activities, birthdays, and so forth. They'd
Mm-hmm.
invite me, I'd invite them. And it was a navigating situation in terms of that. But Corky starts to come into the scene in the urban. Now, Cesar, is rural. And so, he's involved in politics and he starts to speak up about civil rights. And the Black civil rights movement is in our consciousness. The peace movement is in our consciousness. And I really would gravitated toward the peace movement.
Mm.
By high school, I was telling my mom, I'm not going to, you know, I don't believe in war.
Mm.
My goal was to graduate from high school no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
It took me 4 years, and those 4 years were a blessing because it gave me an opportunity to stay in school an extra year and take college classes in 60, 67, 68, and then be recruited as 50 Chicano students through EOP, Educational Opportunity. There was a demand of Black and 7 Chicano students at CU Boulder.
Mm.
I was an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I was an alternate. I got a call and said, "Are you still interested in going to this program? Be here next week at this hall and so forth." And I said, "Yeah, I'll go." I had nothing to lose. I didn't even have a suitcase. I didn't have a
You
suitcase.
lost your
I remember,
suitcase, huh?
yeah. So you start to have this consciousness, and Corky is speaking out. The crusade is organizing. At 62, the Los Voluntarios, for voter rights and so forth, and registration. So it's in our environment. It's in our
Mm-hmm.
life, And so I started to really, really gravitate from the war movement to more of the quote civil rights movement. And Dr. King in 68, the crusade is really involved with the Poor People's Campaign, Corky being asked to lead the Southwest contingent.
Mm.
I find this out later.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did not go to the Poor People's Campaign. I was still in high school, extended high school. Pero anyway, so, when I went to CU and I took a Chicano studies and a Black studies class. And I started to say, wow, we have a history, but we
Mm.
didn't have books. That the only book that was available in 68 was Yo Soy Joaquin.
Mm-hmm.
And that became our book, and so, you start to get turned on to the intellectual side of things, You start to understand that the students in 68 walk out,
Mm-hmm.
and we had heard about that, but we didn't really hear about it. And Bobby Verdugo and I became very good friends just most recently before he died.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had always, loved his spirit and his story and so forth. I never knew him. The first time I met Bobby Verdugo was when he came to Denver 4 years ago for the Chicano studies. And I called him. I said, Bobby, you're coming to Denver. Would you do a platica at SEBA,
Mm-hmm.
our nonprofit? We're inviting people, scholars, activists to come and do a community Chicano studies because our people aren't going to go to this. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? He said, sure, sure, Bones. He had heard of me, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
and he ends up staying with me. He
Mm-hmm.
ends up, we end up touring him and developing. But I invited him to West High School in 69. The students walked out in Denver
Mm-hmm.
in the West Side. And I said, I'm going to have a brother from Adams City High School pick you up and take you to that school. And then they're going to bring you to West High School. So I was talking to the students. He was running a little late, and I used to teach at West High School a Chicano studies class to CU Denver. And so I had already left there, but the semester before, 2 semesters before, but we were able to get the principal to get classes to go and so forth. And I was telling the students that story about how you could engage and love somebody and connect with them. And it was almost identical kinds of stories. You know what I mean? And so I told him, when Bobby walks in the door today will be the first time that I will physically see Bobby Verdugo. And it was a dynamic movement, of course, pero getting back to getting involved, we always were Chicanos. We were Mexican Americans. We were Chicanos. We were Mexicanos, but to become a politicized Chicano at the universities, there was a difference in the definition of Chicano, being in the barrio, the Chicanada, Chicano, I'm 73, so, you went through different experiences of being Chicanos, but to be a politicized Chicano and to have a consciousness about politics, self-determination, liberation, your history, your present, and what's coming in the future is going to be a tidal wave. This world is going to experience a tidal wave of conscious Chicanos, because what has been happening with this identity so-called crisis that we have been in has really not been a crisis. It's been a teaching tool.
Right.
And it's been painful. It is painful. And I'm talking about the X factor, Latinx and so forth, And I was just talking to Josie today and some other brothers from San Diego. So today's been a real good day for me, Jerry.
Yeah.
I started off with the brother asking me, hey, can you help Josie? She's coming in for conference over there. I know it's late, can you give her a reda? And, she needs to connect more with you. I said, yeah, absolutely. Then I called Josie, we started on the onda, you know what I mean? Then I ended up the evening here with you and other people. I said, what more blessings do you want? Can you have in one day? And so getting back to the movimiento, becoming a part of UMAS, United Mexican American Students, coming from Califas, and in 69, the National Chicano Youth Conference, the Plan de Aztlán, declaring our nationhood as indigenous people, sovereign people, as Chicanos, mestizos, and going through that. And so things just started to happen like, wow, I said, here I am, number one, at a university, I had my own bed. I had 3 squares,
Right.
meals every day. I went home, after 6 weeks, I was always coming home to the barrio because I missed the comida, But finally somebody said to me, you're growing. You're gaining weight, man. You're starting to look different. And I said, yeah, you know what? I tried out for the swim team. I was a real good swimmer at La Raza Park Pool. And I said, I'm going to try out for the swim team, a walk-on. And they said, we're going to put you with the football players to do training. So they gave me every food that I wanted plus some. And I didn't make the team, but I loved the training.
You love the food, right?
Yeah, I said, so this is good. So things started to happen. I started to connect with the crusade. The next year, going to the youth conference and meeting Chicanos and people of every walk in life, Puerto Ricanos, you name it, from New York, Chicago, everywhere, this magic was in the air, this ganas. It was like, I'm saying, wow, is this for real, And then Cesar, connecting with the huelga and being a part of peaceful demonstrations and, being spit on. Josie was telling me, I told you the story about Josie in her interview, telling you about she was spit on, when dancing.
Right,
I was telling Josie about that. I said, I remember being spit on, for telling people not to buy grapes and lettuce and so forth, So things just took off. And then once I married Corky's daughter, and now I'm in the family. And so now I've become very intimate with the leadership, the Gonzaleses, and I leave CU and my mother died in 70. Right after we take over La Raza Park, which is an explosive period for me, taking over the park, and 50 years later, finally getting, quote, the city to change it through their laws. We changed it, the day we took it over in 1970, going to be 52 years. Pero, and then going to the LA moratorium in
Mm-hmm.
1970.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always say, I went to a peace demonstration and ended up in a war.
Right. Right.
It freaked me out, and meeting people and watching East LA burn and watching, we hitchhiked in from the airport. And so we went to the Salazar Park, what is now Salazar
Mm-hmm.
Park,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the start. So on our way, we started to see all these cops and sheriffs and so forth. And I said, wow, I was overwhelmed. I'd never been to East LA. I'd never
Right.
been to LA. I'd never
Right.
been to Califas, to begin with. I'm in awe about palm trees. And so, that experience, and then coming home in the 70s, to back to the university and starting to feel, what I mean, I'm wanting to do more. I'm becoming more militant.
Mm.
I'm becoming more spirited in terms of this whole idea of being indigenous, because, my features are very indígena,
Yeah.
and so my grandmother called me her indio,
Mm.
you know, and my mother called me her professor, so I was the indio professor. So that's how, that's
Yeah.
a takeoff there. That's a takeoff. And then at the crusade, meeting people every day, coming,
Right.
to the school, the colegio, to meetings, conferences, you name it. I mean, it was unbelievable for 11 years,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, I wasn't getting an education anymore at the university,
Yeah.
not what I wanted. And so I was turned on with Chicano studies. I said, man, I'm hearing about Rudy Acuna. Well, his book doesn't even come out yet till 72,
Right.
but you start to hear of the elders who are passed, that have passed on,
Mm-hmm.
Juan Gomez Quinones,
Mm-hmm.
you start to hear, the pamphlets are out, and stuff. And I'm saying, you know what? I'm learning more at the crusade meetings every Wednesday
Yeah.
than I am
And
in
so,
any of the classes here. I can't get this. Well, bingo, 1970, Corky in the crusade opened up Escuela Tlatelolco.
mm-hmm.
And then they have a plan to open up a colegio. So I said, you know what? I got to work study. Can I come in and work study at the school?
Mm.
And he says, yeah, sure. So I go to the school, and I'm already, actually fall in love with Corky's daughter at the LA moratorium.
Oh, okay.
I saw her, and I saw this guerrillera, beautiful guerrillera. She's small and beautiful, gorgeous. I mean, you know, picture perfect, and I'm looking at her and I'm saying, I want to marry her.
Mm.
I want to marry her. And so when I got back to Denver, I started to try and see her, and I wasn't successful at first. I wasn't successful, but I became successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went to the escuela and I started spending more time there, that's when I became successful, because I was
Mm.
down in Boulder,
Right.
I mean, in Denver. And so then in 71, we married.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so my mother died in September of 70, and I fell apart, I fell apart. It was a hard, cancer. She died of cancer,
Mm.
younger brothers and sisters, that my uncle, took care of and adopted. I was already 20, on my way. My other brothers were out of the house. My older sister was out of the house, and a mother, so, you learn to be resilient, as
Yeah.
the word I learned,
Yeah.
and to move on. And she would have wanted me to do it, but I was very glad that I saw her the night before she passed on. I had come back from Boulder, and she was dying. She was dying. I was spending as much time as I could, but I needed to take a test the next day. And I told her, I said, I'm going to get up early in the morning so I can go take this test and I'll be home. And she goes, no, you go tonight and you come home in the morning. So when I finished the test, I saw a cousin there, and she was coming to the students. And I knew, bingo, I knew right away
Mm.
that mom had passed on. And
Mm.
it was, it was a hard disease at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still is. Cancer is not,
Yes.
any disease is not good. But so I married, and so forth, and things took off. The leadership, part of it, in the, like in the community. I was tutoring a young kid whose parents were Germans who had a neighborhood store,
Mm.
and I was tutoring my grandmother and some of her friends to learn ABCs and write their names and stuff like that. I was really just doing it as a fun thing to do, but I got paid, candy to teach this kid, his homework,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, and treats, so, I can't pinpoint where the leadership. I didn't go out, saying I'm a leader, because
Yeah.
I was not that. I was not that macho type, big guy. But once I learned about leadership is not size, it's not person, it's really about, I think, love and skills. And
Mm.
because I was involved in the peace movement, I told my mom I'm going to either Mexico or up north to Canada, and so, the militant side of the movement at that time, after the LA moratorium, I wasn't a Chicano power ultra militant. The rhetoric I had to live with and learn to understand it.
Right.
The anger from the berets and the elders, listening to the elders in meetings, and so much pain that
Yeah.
they were dealing with. I said,
Yes.
I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. We were taught, at the crusade, to have values around self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
We worked out. We learned how to box. I could drop somebody.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
we learned how to use guns, and we learned how to respect those guns. We didn't carry weapons. We never advocated in our canto, in our philosophy, in our speeches, ever
Mm-hmm.
armed revolution. We were taught never to cuss, and we never cussed. We never put down. We had actually, even to use the word gringo,
Mm-hmm.
to me was a negative thing. So
Yeah.
I tried not to use it. I used Anglo,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or racist, racist Anglos.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I think, what you're really describing is, what in Spanish we call la educación, which means life experience. And that, life really teaches us. And
Yeah,
and and what you shared is really kind of the wholeness of your life experience, even coming from your family, and you understanding that your family taught you certain values of how to be. Your relatives already saw el profe in you, already saw that you were a teacher, right? But at the same time, journeying, to Los Angeles and different places to march and to be present for your people. And the honest thing is, and I know, we mentioned Bobby que pasa descansa, brother that that crossed over, but even Bobby, when he got involved in the Chicano movement, he didn't get involved because he wanted to be a revolutionary. But Bobby says, the reason I first got involved because I want to be with Yoli. He wanted to be with his girlfriend. So a
yeah,
lot of us
yeah.
didn't get involved because, hey, we wanted
Uh,
to be
uh,
revolutionaries. We wanted to be a part of the struggle. We wanted to be a part of relationships. We wanted to be a part of life. And then life guided us a certain place, right? And
right,
and, and and I think that the other part that you share that I think that is very significant is that there were values. There were ways that we could be, and we were prepared. I mean, you talk about that the self defense and even the weapons and all that, but you were taught to respect those things, and to respect yourself, and that's why we were doing everything because of the respect. And I think that we sometimes don't recognize the struggle that the elders went through, Corky and Cesar, and a lot of the others. You mentioned Josie Talamantes. I mean, the magic of 52 years, right? So
hmm
52 years of when Chicano Park, was really liberated. 52 years of La Raza Park. And 52 years in our tradition is a sacred time. It says that that's
right,
when things begin to shift. Four cycles of 13,
hmm
become that of part of when things shift. And we're seeing that again now. We're seeing the whole sense of things shifting again for us. And But I just want to acknowledge you, brother, for, whether you knew what you were doing or not, whether you did it because, you wanted to marry this young girl, or you did it because, you were tutoring people because, it was a job, or you were getting dulces or whatever. You were there and you showed up, and you showed up in a good way. And you've been involved, for all these years, and you're still involved, and I just want to, congratulate you and all the other gente there in Denver and Colorado for continuing to battle and fight and pray, because the ceremony came in, and our indigenous prayers came in, and our indigenous ways came in, and there's a lot of our success came from that medicine too, you know
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
but it's just want to acknowledge you and all those people that you're connected to, all that generation, the generation that's behind you, for not giving up and continuing to speak for our people and continuing to voice for our people. And the battle's not over. We're still fighting. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about what's going on now. I know there was a big, I guess a big win in terms of finally getting, from the political point of view and the legislative point of view and the city point of view, finally the park that was always La Raza Park, finally getting the true, the name and everything finally getting validated that way. Can you talk a little bit about that movement and the movements that are going on right now that are still part of our struggle?
Sure, and thanks for the acknowledgement and the words, Jerry. It's important for us to recognize and celebrate each other, our people, and that's one thing that I learned, in terms of leadership, and I never really I really don't even today consider myself a leader.
Mm,
I consider myself a person who really, really works from a base of education,
mm,
and education is power. And so, but for La Raza Park, 1970, we take it over. We have a year trying to work with the city. 69, the West Siders, Chicanos take it over. They steal a car and go right in and have demands. And they were militant. They
mm.
were
Yeah.
connected right to the crusade. Well, we were more of an organic Chicano group of a neighborhood youngsters, half in the peace movement, half in the Chicano movement. We had black berets, we had me from the college coming down to teach. I was teaching them Chicano studies in the park. I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Look, listen, this is our history, man. So forth." Anyway, so we started to look at our park and said, you know what, we don't have to put up with this. It's same issues were happening in all the parks in Denver, all the four neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, 52 years later, we changed the name in 1970. The first name was actually voted on to be to be Chicano Park.
Mm.
And I said, we could be Chicano Park. There's one in San Diego already, because San Diego had happened in April.
Right.
We happened in June,
Right.
and I said, there could be more than one Chicano Park. So then a black beret says, Viva la Raza, and he says, I nominate La Raza Park. And I says, do you want to take the nomination? People, we're in the park. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing democratic open nominations. We didn't go to the city to
Mm-hmm.
validate it. We started to validate ourselves. So we voted on it, and so we said, when we take over this park the next couple of days, we got to be able to say, this is what we want. These are our
Mm-hmm.
demands.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our demands for jobs and maintenance and cultural pride, police issues, and so forth. When we graffitied La Raza Park inside the pool, because there was a pool then,
Mm.
and it was the marquee of the north side, to have
Right.
Olympic sized pool. I mean, you don't have that in the Barrio. The
Right.
towers, three towers, beautiful clay tennis courts,
Mm.
I mean, come on, and this place starts to deteriorate
Right.
once Chicanos become, so, we took it over and we went to the channels of trying to change it, trying to change it. And I said, gente, this is a learning experience for
Mm-hmm.
us. We have changed it. it's going to take us a long time. Sure enough, we went to city council twice. They kept changing the rules on us. You have to be registered. You need this many people. They can only live in this district. Now it's you need 100 people, and they could live anywhere in Denver, and they could be a resident of Denver. And so if you're 10 years old, you could write your name. You could sign the petition now. But that took work from getting people on city council. So by 1972, we have a mafioso city councilman. So I asked Corky, what can we do about him? He said, recall him. Corky says, because Corky was a Democratic captain. He knew the political system. He ran for office. He ran for mayor. He ran for the state legislature. And by the way, his granddaughter's in the state legislature passing laws of police reform and parole and sentencing, hardcore legislation that had never been able to be second reading. And today, we have more, quote, Latinos, Chicano raza in the state house, in the Senate, at the local government level. Denver, we control 4 neighborhood seats, including one at large. School boards, we're represented on the school boards. This was not 1970. This didn't happen until La Raza Unida party was organized. And by the way, Denver had a very interesting political experience happening with politics, because as La Raza Unida was being organized, the conservative liberals of the Hispanic faction, start to organize their own political party, the new Hispano party. So you have 2 parties. You have La Raza Unida, and then you have this new political Hispano party. So what that's telling us is that we have the leadership to organize and to mobilize. And we saw that happening when Federico Peña came from Texas and became a Chicano here. He didn't run for mayor as a Chicano, but once he was elected, he was referred to as the first Hispanic, and now he's Latino, and he went through a Chicano period and so forth. But those are all learning processes for our people. So it's exciting. So getting back to being for city council to unanimously vote going on 2 years ago on the winter solstice. When I found out they were going to vote on the winter solstice in December, I told the city council person who sponsored the bill, who happens to be my daughter's best friend, Amanda Sandoval, I said, we're going to win this. We're going to win this. And I told her, I said, in fact, I expected more opposition from the Italians and from the broader community, while timing was right. The changing of places, names, and so forth happening around the country is taking place. So it's the right time, and now you got a new mix of city council, of more liberal white women. You have more raza on board. The whole climate is different. Plus, we have the winter solstice. We have that cosmic energy that's coming unanimously. Boom, unanimous vote. And I said, so now people are very happy about that, but that wasn't the struggle. It was why we had to do that. Why did we have to rename Columbus Park? Who was Columbus? What did it mean to us as Chicanos growing up, especially in the neighborhood, and watching Italians celebrate there, and then not including you into the celebration when they gave away hot dogs and stuff, while it was for the Italian kids. And so how does that make you feel, to go to a Columbus Day celebration, but, you can only watch.
And I think that becomes, it's symbolic in one way, but there's so many different levels, that really were being advocated for,
Right.
I appreciate the history, and I know there's so much more, and there's so much
tons.
more but again, symbolically, but also important in terms of identity, that it may have taken 52 years, but throughout those 52 years, there was so much education, there's so much leadership development, there's so many blessings, And it really pushed all of us as a people to really explore who we really were, to
Mm-hmm.
explore our identity, our values, our traditions. I know in those 52 years that we have increased our spirit, our capacity as a people. As I mentioned before, our indigenous connection, our knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
our ceremonies, the more people that we have, the more places that we have. I know you have a whole number of leaders in Denver, some that we know and we've worked with, very strongly with as a National Compadres Network going over there. I remember speaking, at the youth conference there for,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so a number of us have contributed and been together in trying to fight for the rights of our people, and I
Mm-hmm.
think as an elder, ya estás viejo, vato, you know you know I wonder if you can, as we close out today, offer some consejos, some advice for that next generation, because the fight isn't over. We're still fighting. We're still demanding justice and dignity for our people. We're still demanding the rights that we deserve. So I'm wondering if you can just offer, what advice would you give to that next generation that is now, the younger aspect of you, that are in the process now of developing themselves? What advice would you give them? What have you learned that are important to know and important to carry and important to be about as they now guide this next generation? What advice would you give the next generation?
Well, first, I think it's important for us to understand that we are not in a struggle for justice out of the hate of an enemy.
Mm,
We are in the struggle for a better life for all people.
mm,
Because I learned something very profound over the years. If it's good for Chicanos because of our racial mix and our cosmic and everything, if it's good for us, it's probably good for everybody in the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Because it's so common, basic, it's very rich and so forth. So I think that that's the first thing that we really have to approach this from a love, positive,
Mm,
peace, but at the same time, have the tools of self determination. Yeah, it scared the hell out of people to know that at the crusade, that we learned how to take weapons apart. We had gun, reloaders. We had target practice, but they did the same thing at high school when they take kids to ROTC and they're shooting rifles down in the school,
right.
and so so what's so shocking about that? But anyway, it's surround yourself with people who are positive, people who can help you and keep moving.
Mm,
The park. I told those young kids we have nothing to lose 52 years ago, and we didn't. And those that have survived today, I look at them and I'm saying, I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be part of them.
mm,
You know what I mean. But the elders that we had, listening to them, and it was painful.
yeah.
It was painful. Because they were looking at justice sometimes another way. And so we had to make decisions, and you need to make decisions and know that there are going to be dark days. There are going to be
Mm,
bad things that happen. There are going to be tragedies. We've had a lot of tragedies in the Chicano movement. A lot of them could have been avoided,
yeah.
but they happen. Colorado is has a history of students being blown up in cars and berets, being blown up, with dynamite and stuff all over the place,
Yeah. Yeah.
and pero there's a common sense. There's a common sense that I've always relied on. What does my common sense tell me about this? What does my humanity tell me
Mm,
about it? And what would my abuelita tell me?
yeah.
When I told her, and I didn't share this with my mom that we were going to take over this park. I shared it with my abuelita. She didn't say yes and she didn't say no, but she had that look in her eyes, like cuídate,
Yeah.
and that's all that was said. Now, my uncle, who was raising me,
Yeah.
he was ready to kick me out of the house.
Right. 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 But I think, there's some beautiful positive advice, brother. And I want to leave people with, the first thing that you said is that, we do things out of love. And we do things out of love, you can be strong out of love, you can march and speak up out of love, but we do it out of love. And then your grandma says, cuídate. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the balance of it. We got to take care of ourselves. Take
Mm-hmm.
care of ourselves and, and be real trucha, be careful
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because the revolution continues. The battle continues, and we have to do it for that next generation, And as
Mm-hmm.
as as we conclude the day, brother, again, I just want to thank you for your journey, for you not giving up, and all of us have done, what we can, and you've done what you can, and and acknowledging you, I'm acknowledging, other leaders like Corky, like Josita Talamantes, the other leader Cesar, and so many others. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
contemporaries now that are
Mm-hmm.
leading that if I begin to name it, there would be so many. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Bobby Verdugo, and there's others, Sal Castro, but there's so
Mm-hmm.
many. But now we have a group of yelders, meaning the ones that are younger than us in the middle that are carrying the medicine, that are carrying the teachings, and then you got our young people, right? Young
Yeah.
people that are speaking up and are so much more articulate than we were, and maybe more
Oh yeah.
conscious than we were.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
we do this, in honor of our elders, in honor of our ancestors. But we do this so that the next generation, maybe has more respect, that people respect them more, that honor them more, that they can feel more the love of their ancestors in them, but that they struggle less than we did, that
Mm-hmm.
that they have an avenue for healing, they have an avenue for recovering the sacredness of who they are. And the reason why we are as far as we are is because of many elders and leaders, that have set the example for us. So I want to thank you again, brother, for all that you do. Give my abrazo to Josie and to all the gente there in Denver and Colorado. We appreciate all the medicine and all the teachings that you have given to the world. And as we finish today, once again, I want to acknowledge the ancestors and all those leaders over the years. And we don't know
Mm-hmm.
about the stories of how much they suffered and how this affected their health and their mental
Mm-hmm.
health and their
Mm-hmm.
well-being, because those stories never came out. But some of those wounds still exist in our community. And we have
Mm-hmm.
a responsibility not only for telling the stories, but for healing the pain. And what we do here is lift up the generations of pain, but we also lift up the generations of medicine. I want to encourage all of you that are listening to look for your medicine, to speak to the elders, but to begin on your healing path so that we can heal the generations of pain that have come before, but we can also embrace the generations of medicine that we have. I want to thank you all for listening, and reach out to somebody with love. Speak up when there's injustice. But more than anything, as Bones' grandma says, cuídate, take care of yourself.
Cuídate.
Trucha, be careful, because the revolution continues. But let it be a revolution with love. Thank you all very much. Claso Camarle. Él es Dios.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.